You know how they say life can change in an instant? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. One minute, I was basking in the glow of a perfect proposal, and the next, I was being asked to consider a living arrangement that felt like a step back into the 1950s. Let me back up a bit. My name is Marin, and up until that moment, I thought I had it all figured out. I'm 34, an occupational therapist, and fiercely independent. I've always prided myself on being able to balance my career and my personal life. But then Ethan, my charming and sometimes frustratingly loyal fiancé, threw a curveball I didn't see coming. We were sitting in our favorite little cafe, the kind with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh coffee that hits you the moment you walk in. Ethan was fiddling with his cappuccino cup, a sure sign he was about to drop something big. I could tell he was nervous, but I didn't expect what came next. Marin, he started, his voice a little too casual. I've been thinking maybe we should consider moving in with my mom after we get married. I almost choked on my scone. Move in with Lillian? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Lillian, his mother, was a force of nature. A retired school principal with a penchant for control, she was the kind of person who could make a simple dinner feel like a board meeting. Just for a while, Ethan continued, not meeting my eyes. She's been lonely since Dad passed, and it would give us a chance to save up for a bigger place. I could feel my heart racing. This was not part of the plan. I had always imagined us building our life together, not living under the watchful eye of his mother. But I also knew how much family meant to Ethan. His sense of duty was one of the things I loved about him, but it was also something that could drive me up the wall. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. Ethan, I get that you want to be there for your mom, but living with her? Don't you think that's a bit much? He finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. She's been through a lot, Marin. And it wouldn't be forever. Just until she's back on her feet. There it was, the conflict that had been simmering beneath the surface. Ethan's loyalty to his family versus my need for independence. I could feel the tension building, like a storm about to break. Okay, I said slowly, how about a compromise? We could find a place nearby. That way, we're close enough to help but still have our own space. Ethan nodded, relief washing over his face. Yeah, that could work. I'll talk to her about it. Despite the uneasy truce, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Lillian wasn't the type to let go easily, and I had a sinking suspicion that moving nearby wouldn't be enough to keep her at bay. As we left the cafe, I noticed Ethan's phone buzzing on the table. It was a text from Lillian. I didn't mean to look, but the words jumped out at me. Make sure she understands what's at stake. I felt a chill run down my spine. What exactly did she mean by that? It was an unsettling thought, and one I couldn't ignore. Back at home, I tried to push the conversation with Ethan to the back of my mind, but it lingered like a shadow. I busied myself with work, hoping that diving into my patient's progress reports would distract me. But every time I glanced at the clock, I was reminded of the ticking time bomb that was our living arrangement. Later that night, as I lay in bed next to Ethan, I couldn't help but wonder what else Lillian might have up her sleeve. Was this just about loneliness, or was there something deeper at play? I had a feeling I was about to find out. And that's how it all began. A simple suggestion that spiraled into something much more complicated. I knew I had to keep my wits about me because in this family drama, nothing was as it seemed. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the tip of the iceberg. The next few weeks felt like navigating a minefield. Ethan and I found a small apartment close to Lillian's house, a compromise that seemed to appease everyone on the surface. But beneath the polite smiles and forced pleasantries, tension simmered. It started with Lillian's frequent visits. She had a knack for showing up unannounced, always with some excuse. I was just in the neighborhood, she'd say, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. But there was always something else, an opinion on our furniture arrangement, a comment on my choice of career. Her words, though wrapped in sweetness, carried a sting. One evening, we had Lillian over for dinner. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, when she wandered in, her eyes scanning the room like she was taking inventory. So, Marin, she began, her voice casual, are you still working those long hours? Must be tough balancing that with home life. I could feel the muscles in my jaw tighten. I manage, I replied, trying to keep my tone light. I love what I do, and Ethan's really supportive. Lillian raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on her lips. Of course, but family is important too. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made. It was a dig, subtle but sharp. I turned back to the cutting board, focusing on the rhythm of the knife. Absolutely, but I think Ethan and I have found a good balance. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of small talk and forced laughter. Ethan seemed oblivious to the undercurrents, completely charmed by his mother's presence. I watched him, wondering if he noticed how his mother's eyes lingered on me, assessing, calculating. After Lillian left, I sank into the couch, exhaustion washing over me. Ethan joined me, his arm draping over my shoulders. "That went well, didn't it?" he asked, a hopeful note in his voice. "Sure," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Your mom's something else." He chuckled, missing the edge in my words. "Yeah, she can be a bit much, but she means well. She's just worried about us." I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. I didn't want to start a fight, not when I was still trying to figure out how to navigate this new dynamic. But the next day, things took a turn. At work, I received a call from the pharmacy about a prescription I didn't remember refilling. Confused, I assured them it must have been a mistake. But as I hung up, unease settled in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That evening, I mentioned it to Ethan. "Did you pick up a prescription for me?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He looked puzzled. "No, why?" I shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Just got a weird call from the pharmacy. Probably nothing." But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like a thread unraveling, one I needed to follow. A few days later, I found myself at Lillian's house, dropping off some groceries she'd requested. As I put the bags on her kitchen counter, a small stack of papers caught my eye. Among them, a note scribbled in Lillian's unmistakable handwriting. "Refill Marin's prescription." My heart skipped a beat. Why would she have a note about my medication? I felt a chill creep up my spine, a sense of violation that made my skin crawl. I didn't confront her then, not yet. I needed more information, more proof. But as I left her house, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lillian's meddling went deeper than I'd realized. Back at home, I tried to act normal, but my mind was racing. I couldn't tell Ethan, not without evidence. He'd never believe his mother capable of something so underhanded. Instead, I called Tessa my best friend and confidant. As soon as she picked up, I blurted out everything. "Tess, I think Lillian's messing with my meds." "Are you serious?" she exclaimed, her voice a mix of disbelief and anger. "That's insane, Marin. You need to be careful." "I know," I said, my voice shaky. "But I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm losing control." Tessa was silent for a moment, then she spoke, her voice firm. "You need to find out what she's up to, and be ready for whatever comes next." As I hung up, I realized Tessa was right. This wasn't just about Lillian's fear of losing Ethan. It was about control, and I had a feeling things were about to get a lot more complicated. I had spent the better part of the week trying to piece together the puzzle Lillian had laid out, but every time I thought I had a handle on it, something else slipped through my fingers. The tension was palpable, like a storm about to break, and I could feel my patience wearing thin. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home to find Lillian sitting in our living room. Her presence was like a cold draft, uninvited and unsettling. Ethan was in the kitchen, oblivious to the unease that her visits always brought. "Hello, Marin," Lillian said, her voice smooth as silk. "I hope you don't mind. I thought I'd surprise you both with dinner." I forced a smile, though my jaw felt tight. "Of course not, Lillian. It's always nice to have company." She nodded, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. "I was just telling Ethan how proud I am of him. He's been working so hard." I glanced at Ethan, who was busy stirring a pot on the stove. "He has," I agreed, trying to keep my voice neutral. Lillian leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on me. "And you, Marin? How's work treating you? It must be hard, balancing everything." I shrugged, unwilling to give her more ammunition. "It's busy, but I manage." She tilted her head, a small smile playing on her lips. You know, sometimes I wonder if you're taking on too much. It's important to focus on what truly matters. There it was again, that subtle jab. I could feel my pulse quicken, but I swallowed my retort. This wasn't the time or place for a confrontation, not with Ethan right there. As we sat down to dinner, I noticed Lillian's eyes flicking between Ethan and me, as if she were gauging the distance between us. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the food, but it was hard to shake the feeling that she was orchestrating something. Halfway through the meal, Lillian casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, I spoke to Dr. Harris the other day. He mentioned your last checkup went well." I froze, my fork hovering midair. Dr. Harris was my doctor, but I hadn't told anyone about my recent visit. "How did that come up?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Lillian waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, you know how small towns are. Everyone knows everyone. He was just being friendly." I forced a laugh, though my mind was racing. How did she know about my checkup? And why was she talking to my doctor? After dinner, as Lillian prepared to leave, she turned to me, her expression softening. "You know, Marin, I only want what's best for you both. Sometimes, sacrifices have to be made for the greater good." I nodded, though her words felt like a veiled threat. "I understand, Lillian. Thanks for dinner." Once she was gone, I turned to Ethan, who was clearing the table. "Did you know your mom was talking to Dr. Harris?" He shook his head, looking genuinely puzzled. "No, why?" I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "It's just strange, that's all. I didn't think they knew each other." Ethan shrugged, dismissing it as small-town gossip. "She probably ran into him at the store or something. You know how she is." I nodded, though unease gnawed at me. I needed to get to the bottom of this, and soon. The next day, I decided to drop by Dr. Harris's office. As I sat in the waiting room, my mind spun with possibilities. Was Lillian meddling in my health? And if so, why? When Dr. Harris finally called me in, I wasted no time. "Doctor, I know this might sound odd, but has Lillian Hawthorne been in contact with you about me?" He looked surprised, then nodded slowly. "She did mention you. Said she was worried about your stress levels and wanted to make sure you were taking care of yourself." I felt a chill run down my spine. Did she ask about my medications? Dr. Harris hesitated, then nodded again. "She mentioned something about ensuring you were on the right track." I assumed she was just being a concerned family member. I thanked him, though my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Lillian was more deeply involved than I'd realized, and her interference wasn't just about Ethan. It was about control, and I was caught in her web. As I left the office, I knew I couldn't keep this from Ethan any longer. I needed to confront him, to make him see what was happening. But as I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, and that the storm was far from over. The air in our apartment was thick with unspoken words. I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. The evidence was mounting, and Lillian's interference had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I had to talk to Ethan. He was sitting at the dining table, absorbed in his laptop. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for the conversation that was about to unfold. "Ethan, we need to talk," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. He looked up, a hint of concern in his eyes. "What's up?" I sat down across from him, trying to gather my thoughts. "It's about your mom. I think she's been interfering with my health." Ethan's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "I found out she's been talking to my doctor, asking about my medications, and there have been some discrepancies in my prescriptions." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Marin, that sounds a bit extreme. Are you sure?" I nodded, frustration bubbling beneath my calm exterior. "I spoke to Dr. Harris. He confirmed it. She's been meddling, Ethan." Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm sure she was just worried. Maybe she overstepped, but she wouldn't do anything to hurt you." His words stung, a sharp reminder of where his loyalties lay. "This isn't just about being worried, Ethan. It's about control. She's trying to manipulate our lives." He shook his head, disbelief etched on his face. "I don't know, Marin. She's my mom. She wouldn't. I cut him off, my voice rising. Wouldn't she? You've seen how she tries to insert herself into every decision we make. This is just another way for her to keep us under her thumb. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but then closed it, his expression conflicted. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the tug of war between his love for me and his loyalty to his mother. I stood up, pacing the room to release some of the tension coiling inside me. I need you to see this, Ethan. I need you to understand what she's doing. He remained silent, his gaze fixed on the table. The silence stretched between us, heavy and oppressive. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you want me to do? I stopped pacing, turning to face him. I want you to talk to her. Set boundaries. Make her understand that this is our life, not hers to control. He nodded slowly, though his expression was still troubled. Okay, I'll talk to her. But his words didn't fill me with confidence. I knew how deep Lillian's hold was on him, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation wouldn't be the last. Later that night, as I lay in bed, my mind refused to quiet down. I couldn't stop replaying the day's events, the confrontation with Ethan, the look of doubt in his eyes. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure of what lay below. The next morning, I decided to take matters into my own hands. If Ethan couldn't see the truth, I needed to find someone who could. Someone who knew Lillian's tactics better than anyone else. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Hello? Oliver? It's Marin. I need your help. There was a pause, then Oliver's voice, cautious but curious. Marin? What's going on? I explained everything, from the proposal to Lillian's interference. As I spoke, I could hear Oliver's sharp intake of breath, the disbelief turning to understanding. Sounds like she hasn't changed, he said, his voice tinged with bitterness. She did the same to me, you know. Tried to control every aspect of my life until I had enough. I felt a sense of relief, knowing I wasn't alone in this. I don't know what to do, Oliver. I love Ethan, but I can't live like this. Oliver sighed, a sound filled with empathy. You need to protect yourself, Marin. Whatever that means for you. Don't let her dictate your life. His words resonated with me, a reminder that I had the power to change my situation. As I hung up, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I wouldn't let Lillian's manipulations define my future. But as I prepared to face whatever came next, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. And this time, I wouldn't back down. The days following my conversation with Oliver felt like a blur. I was on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Ethan had promised to talk to Lillian, but I could sense his hesitation. Tension between us was a constant undercurrent, an unspoken rift growing wider with each passing day. One evening, Ethan came home later than usual, his expression weary. I was in the kitchen, attempting to distract myself with dinner preparations. The aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air, but it did little to soothe my nerves. Hey, he said, dropping his bag by the door. Sorry I'm late. Work was a mess. I nodded, trying to keep my tone light. No worries. Dinner's almost ready. He wandered over, peering into the pot. Smells great. I'm starving. We fell into a comfortable silence, the clinking of dishes the only sound between us. But I could feel the weight of the conversation we weren't having pressing down on me. Finally, I couldn't stand it any longer. Did you talk to your mom? Ethan stiffened, his shoulders tensing. I did. She didn't take it well, Marin. I stopped stirring, turning to face him. What did she say? He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. She got defensive. Said she was just trying to help and that you misunderstood her intentions. I let out a frustrated sigh. Ethan, this isn't just about intentions. It's about boundaries. She's crossing them. He met my gaze, his eyes filled with conflict. I know, but she's my mom. She's always been like this. I thought maybe she'd change, but... His voice trailed off, and I could see the struggle etched on his face. It was a familiar dance, one I'd seen too many times before. His loyalty to Lillian was a powerful force, one that often blinded him to the truth. "I just need you to be on my side," I said softly, my voice tinged with desperation. He reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I am Marin. I promise I'll talk to her again." But his words felt hollow, a promise without substance. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, the precarious balance of our relationship tipping toward a breaking point. The next day, I decided to take a walk, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. As I strolled through the park, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, a storm gathering on the horizon. My phone buzzed in my pocket, jolting me from my thoughts. It was a message from Tessa. "Can we meet? I need to talk." I texted back, arranging to meet her at our favorite cafe. When I arrived, Tessa was already there, her expression serious. "What's up?" I asked, sliding into the seat across from her. She hesitated, then leaned forward, her voice low. "I heard something, Marin. About Lillian." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" Tessa glanced around, ensuring no one was listening. "A friend of mine works at the pharmacy. She overheard Lillian asking about your prescriptions again. It sounds like she's trying to change them." The news hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a rush of anger, mingled with fear. "Why would she do that?" Tessa shook her head, her eyes filled with concern. "I don't know, but it's not right. You need to be careful." I nodded, though my mind was racing. Lillian's interference was becoming more brazen, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to confront her, to make her understand that her actions were unacceptable. That evening, I returned home, my resolve hardened. Ethan was in the living room, flipping through channels on the TV. I took a deep breath, preparing for the confrontation ahead. "We need to go see your mom," I said, my voice steady. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Now?" "Yes, now. I can't keep living like this, Ethan. I need to talk to her." He hesitated, then nodded, sensing the urgency in my voice. "Okay. Let's go." The drive to Lillian's house was silent, tension crackling between us. When we arrived, I squared my shoulders, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Lillian answered the door, her expression a mix of surprise and curiosity. "Marin Ethan." What a surprise. I met her gaze, refusing to back down. "We need to talk, Lillian. About the prescriptions." Her eyes widened, a flash of something, guilt perhaps, crossing her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do," I pressed, my voice unwavering. "I know you've been interfering and it needs to stop." Ethan stood beside me, silent but supportive. I could feel his presence, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this. Lillian's expression hardened, her facade slipping. "I was only trying to help, Marin." "You're making a mistake." "No, Lillian," I replied, my voice firm. "The mistake would be letting you continue to control our lives." As the words hung between us, I knew this was a turning point. It was time to take back control, to protect my future from Lillian's grasp. And this time I wouldn't falter. The days after confronting Lillian were a haze of tension and uncertainty. I had hoped that facing her head-on would bring some clarity, but instead it left me feeling more adrift than ever. Finn's promise to talk to her again hung in the air, unfulfilled and weighing heavily on my mind. One evening, as I sorted through the mail, a letter caught my eye. It was addressed to Ethan, but the return address was Lillian's. Curiosity got the better of me, and I hesitated for a moment before deciding to open it. What I found inside made my heart sink. The letter was a detailed list of expenses, all marked as reimbursements. But what struck me most was the amount, thousands of dollars funneled to Lillian over the past few months. My mind raced with questions. Why hadn't Ethan mentioned this? What else was he hiding? I confronted Ethan as soon as he walked through the door. "Ethan, we need to talk. Now." He looked taken aback by the urgency in my voice. "What's going on?" I handed him the letter, watching his expression shift from confusion to guilt. "What is this, Ethan? Why are you giving your mom all this money?" He ran a hand through his hair, his face a mask of frustration. "It's not what it looks like, Marin. She needed help with some bills, and I didn't want to worry you. I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me. You didn't want to worry me? Then we're supposed to be a team. How could you keep this from me? He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off, my voice rising. This isn't just about the money. It's about trust. How can I trust you when you keep secrets like this? Finn's shoulders slumped, his expression one of defeat. I'm sorry, Marin. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could handle it. I turned away, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions crashing over me. The man I loved, the man I thought I knew, had been keeping secrets that threatened to unravel everything we'd built. As I stood there, grappling with the weight of his betrayal, my phone buzzed with a message from Oliver. We need to talk. It's urgent. I didn't hesitate. I needed answers, and Oliver was the only one who could help me make sense of this mess. I left Ethan standing in the living room, his apologies ringing hollow in my ears. Meeting Oliver at a quiet cafe, I felt a sense of dread settle over me. He greeted me with a nod, his expression serious. I'm glad you came. There's something you need to know. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. What is it? Oliver sighed, his gaze steady. I've been looking into some things. Lillian's been using Ethan's money to pay off debts she's racked up over the years. She's been hiding it from him, manipulating him to keep him in the dark. The revelation hit me like a freight train. So she's been lying to him too? Oliver nodded. She's always been like this, Marin. She has a way of twisting things to keep people under her control. I felt a chill run down my spine, the enormity of Lillian's deception sinking in. I don't know what to do, Oliver. I feel like I'm losing everything. He reached across the table, his hand resting on mine. You're not alone in this, but you need to protect yourself. You can't let her pull you down with her. As I left the cafe, Oliver's words echoed in my mind. I knew he was right, but the path ahead felt impossibly daunting. My relationship with Ethan was crumbling, and the future I'd envisioned seemed to slip further out of reach with each passing day. Returning home, I found Ethan sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked up as I entered, his eyes filled with regret. Marin, I'm sorry. I should have been honest with you. I nodded, though the hurt still lingered. I know, Ethan. But things need to change. We can't keep living like this. He nodded, his voice barely a whisper. I'll talk to her. I promise. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was too late. The damage had been done, and I was left questioning everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and trust. The road ahead was uncertain, and I had no idea how to navigate it. But one thing was clear. I couldn't continue down this path without losing myself in the process. And that was a price I wasn't willing to pay. The decision to leave Ethan had been building like a storm, inevitable and unstoppable. But the moment I finally made up my mind, the reality of it hit me with a force I hadn't anticipated. I was about to dismantle the life we'd built together, brick by brick, and there was no turning back. I packed my things quietly, the sound of zippers and rustling clothes echoing in the silence of our apartment. Each item I placed in my suitcase felt like a piece of my heart being torn away, but I knew I had to do it. For my own sake. Ethan came home as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room. He paused in the doorway, taking in the sight of my suitcase, and I saw the realization dawn in his eyes. Marin, what's going on? He asked, his voice laced with disbelief. I straightened, meeting his gaze with a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. I'm leaving, Ethan. I can't do this anymore. He took a step forward, his expression a mix of confusion and desperation. Leaving? Why? We can fix this. I shook my head, the words spilling out in a torrent. We can't fix what's broken, Ethan. Your mother's control, the secrets, the lies, it's too much. I need to protect myself. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away, the distance between us a chasm that couldn't be bridged. Marin, please. I'll talk to her. I'll make it right. I wanted to believe him, but I knew better. You've said that before, Ethan. And nothing's changed. I can't keep waiting for things to get better. The silence stretched between us, heavy and fraught with unspoken words. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the conflict between his loyalty to his mother and his love for me. As I turned to leave, the door swung open and Lillian stood there, her presence as commanding as ever. "What's all this?" she demanded, her gaze sweeping over the scene. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm leaving, Lillian. I can't be a part of this family anymore." Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of something, perhaps fear, crossing her face. "You're making a mistake, Marin. You're throwing away everything." I met her gaze head-on, refusing to back down. "No, Lillian. The mistake would be staying and letting you control my life." Ethan moved to stand between us, his voice pleading. "Mom, please." "Not now." But Lillian wasn't finished. "You think you can just walk away? You'll regret this, Marin. You're nothing without this family." Her words stung, but they also fueled a fire within me. I squared my shoulders, my voice steady. "I'm more than this, Lillian. I deserve better." Tension in the room was palpable, a living thing that pulsed between us. I could feel Ethan's eyes on me, searching for something, anything that might change my mind. But I was resolute. As I turned to go, Oliver appeared in the doorway, his presence a surprising comfort. He stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Lillian. "Enough, Mom. Let her go." Lillian's eyes widened, a mix of shock and betrayal. "Oliver, you have no right." "I have every right," he interrupted, his voice firm. "I've watched you manipulate and control for too long. It's time for it to stop." The room fell silent, the weight of Oliver's words hanging in the air. I felt a surge of gratitude toward him for standing up to her when I needed it most. With one last glance at Ethan, I picked up my suitcase and walked out the door, my heart heavy but my spirit unbroken. I could hear Lillian's voice fading behind me, her protests falling on deaf ears. As I stepped into the cool night air, I knew I was walking into the unknown. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of freedom, a lightness that came from finally taking control of my own life. Path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to navigate. And as I moved forward, I knew I was leaving the past behind, ready to embrace whatever came next. Moving in with Tessa was like stepping into a different world, one where laughter and warmth replaced the tension and unease that had become so familiar. Her apartment was a haven, filled with vibrant artwork and the comforting aroma of fresh coffee. It was a place where I could finally breathe. As the days turned into weeks, I began to piece my life back together. Tessa's unwavering support was a constant reminder that I wasn't alone in this journey. She encouraged me to focus on my work, to find joy in the small victories, and to embrace the independence I had longed for. One sunny afternoon, as we sat on her balcony sipping iced tea, Tessa turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You seem lighter, Mon. Like you found yourself again." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words. "I think I have. It's been a long time coming." She nodded, her eyes filled with pride. "You've come a long way. I'm proud of you." We sat in comfortable silence, the gentle breeze carrying away the remnants of past burdens. It was a moment of peace, a glimpse of the life I was slowly rebuilding. But the past wasn't entirely behind me. One evening, as I sorted through a box of old letters and keepsakes, I stumbled upon an envelope addressed in Lillian's familiar handwriting. Curiosity piqued, I opened it, unsure of what I might find. Inside was a letter, the words carefully penned and surprisingly vulnerable. Lillian wrote of her regrets, her fear of being alone, and her misguided attempts to keep her family close. It was a side of her I hadn't seen before, a glimpse into the loneliness that had driven her actions. I read the letter twice, absorbing the raw emotion within it. Didn't excuse her behavior, but it offered a new perspective, a reminder that even those who hurt us are often struggling with their own demons. Later, I met Oliver for coffee, eager to share the letter and my thoughts. He listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "It's strange, isn't it? How people can be so complicated." I nodded, reflecting on the tangled web of relationships that had brought us to this point. "It makes you wonder about forgiveness and understanding." Oliver smiled, a hint of warmth in his eyes. "Maybe it's about finding peace, even if things don't go the way we hoped." His words resonated with me, a reminder that life was rarely black and white. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of closure, a newfound acceptance of the past and all its complexities. Months passed and the seasons changed. I found myself at a family gathering with Oliver, surrounded by laughter and the joyful chaos of children playing. I watched as Oliver's kids chased each other through the garden, their laughter echoing in the warm afternoon air. Among them was my son, a vibrant reminder of the future I was building. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me, for the journey that had brought me here and the lessons I had learned along the way. As I stood there, watching the scene unfold, I realized that family wasn't just about blood or obligation. It was about love, respect, and the connections we chose to nurture. It was about building a life that honored both the past and the possibilities of the future. In that moment, I understood that true strength came from embracing all the parts of myself: the independent woman, the loving mother, and the resilient survivor. I had faced my fears, confronted the shadows of my past, and emerged stronger for it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the garden, I felt a sense of peace settle within me. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had also been a path of growth and self-discovery. And as I watched my son play, surrounded by the family we had chosen, I knew that the future was bright. It was a new dawn, a fresh start filled with hope and the promise of all that was yet to come.